Hello there. I have some things on my mind. Some of them just from today. Wanted to comment on an article, Hate Thucydides. Uh, a radio piece I heard on the CBC talking about masculinity, and that suggested to me that maybe I'm allowed to share this poem or this song that I wrote. It was a few years ago, and it was my first attempt. I think I've tried it 3 times so far, but it was my first attempt at responding to Taylor Swift's what is it, The Man song, where she talks about some really profound concepts, and she really gave me some just astounding insights into her experience as not only as as a woman, but as a talented, as a beautiful woman, as a woman that's, for her financial success, she's been objectified, right, as a piece of beauty. She gave me some insights into the music or entertainment industry and how they objectify and misogynize women, and I really appreciated that song on an interpersonal, on an emotional level. On an academic level, I thought I owed it to academia. After all, Taylor Swift, she does have her PhD in, I believe literature. There's an honorary PhD in literature, so this is important. And I felt I owed it. Not that I'm very good, but I think I can still contribute a small amount just by trying to provide as best as I can, and by trying, I can get better. My response, I guess, I don't think Taylor Swift is wrong. She's experienced some things in her life and in her industry, and she really calls it out, right? And it's a beautiful, eloquent song for that reason. At the same time, I felt, hey now, I think you might be painting us all with the same brush. I don't think, I think you're being fair to your experience. I don't think you're being fair to men. I think you're putting us under um, quite an umbrella, and maybe categorizing us as these really segment of really affluent, maybe um, playboy, flyboy type. And I want to use it in quotes men, because I don't think that's a man. I think that maybe that's a big boy, maybe that's a really wealthy boy, but I don't think there's an amount of maturity or cerebral development, self-reflection, and cognition. Don't get me wrong, some of these actors that she references in the song, highly talented, really intelligent people in their field, but I'm not sure if they could write their own sonnet. I think there's a little bit more of a single dimension to this person. And I think that's what Taylor Swift did a really good job of calling him out on. But she didn't call it super guy or playboy or flyboy. She called it man. And I think if I was a man, like if I had these genitals, or if I had this physiology, and that really struck. Taylor Swift's all about chords. It really struck a chord with me, and I'm grateful for it, because as amazing as Taylor Swift is and as terrible as I am at songwriting and poetry, I felt, you know what, I'm gonna take a crack at this. I need to say something. I have a voice too. I have experiences. I have knowledge I can contribute. That maybe it'll be valuable in some way to one other person down the road, just like Taylor Swift's songs and crafts are. Make no mistake, Taylor Swift shares such a small fraction of what she writes. She's always writing her poetry and her songs. It's amazing, and you can see that through her music. This is a very insightful person. She has some very deep, intelligent thoughts, and she's found a masterful way of sharing her thoughts with other people, and she does it with harmonics and language, and it's truly masterful. She's not going anywhere. She's definitely one of the ages. Talent like this and a mind like this does not come around very often. She is a titan, and she's going to be remembered for a very, very long time. But I felt I thought I could contribute. She very much inspired me. And in some ways I felt, with that umbrella term of man, like I'm a man. But what she's saying, I totally understand what she's saying academically. But that's not me. I haven't had those experiences, and very often quite the opposite experiences that Taylor's describing. I can relate to Taylor Swift as a woman. I can relate to her as a man with her complaints and with her experiences. But I'm a man. Because I say, hey, wait a minute. I know what you're talking about. I felt the same way. But it's a little bit different with my experience. Right? I'm going to say, hey, it's kind of lonely and dire and different and worthy of song with my experience too. So that CBC, I don't think it was ideas. It was a CBC 30 minutes special or documentary talking, even mentioning Fight Club and, masculinity or toxic masculinity, and it reminded me of my song, and it's encouraged me to say, hey, I'll share this song. I wrote it a few years ago, and it is my attempt. That's how I'm trying, and I tried it again, and I'll share that. That will be for another time. Same songs, but I'm trying again at a later date to still respond as an intelligent academic person. To say I've heard your thesis, and I want to agree on all of the points because these are your experiences and it can only be celebrated and applauded. But I want to reference it and say, this has inspired me. I can hear your melody, and I don't have the resources. I don't have the mixer. I don't necessarily have the interest to pursue those things. It's just I did want to put them down into words, and by recording this in this format, it gives me the opportunity in a rather passive way to just throw it out there and say, hey, if somebody else can do something with this, at least these ideas that I've put to paper can now be experienced and contemplated by somebody else. Maybe I'm adding value to society by writing down my thoughts, and then by finding a way to share them. Speaking of that, it reminds me of a book. I don't like the title of the book, but it was a profound book. I think it should have been better called How to Live Like a Gentleman. And there was stories of polar exploration, journal entries from these British, there's these affluent British men at the, turn of the 19th century into the 20th century. They're exploring the Arctic and the Antarctic. And it was fascinating the way they would keep the peace. It was just part of their culture, that high echelon, high upper crust portion of that culture. Some of these were military, trained, so that level of discretion and class is they would do that 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 sissy of hobbies, right? How many men have been, or boys have been bullied in their younger years for having a diary or a journal? That's what these boss guys did. And some of them didn't come back. Like, they died, they froze to death, sometimes in considerable agony. It was found on their faces. But they, one moment, I need to plug my, no. But they wouldn't argue with each other as much. They would diary and journal and write some of their complaints, like so-and-so's getting on my nerves, and clearly they wouldn't read each other's journals. They had that decorum and those boundaries. Is it really personal stuff? And I read that book, it was about 6 years ago, one of those pop-up libraries when you walk around neighborhoods of your city. Just a tiny novella. And I read it, and it's just a wealth of knowledge. I haven't been able to find it since. It's called How to Die Like a Gentleman. Bad marketing. And when you read these stories, it's really how to live like one. It's like, keep a journal. Be very guarded and discreet with how you express your opinions, what you say. Speak to people immediately to their face. Choose those words very carefully, because that's in real time. There's no pause, rewind, try again in that encounter. But practice with your journal. Experiment with your words. So when you are forced by convention or by peer pressure to actually verbalize, you've honed your skill of word choice, and you're able to articulate in a substantially more compassionate and fulfilling way, and the people around you appreciate it. It's extremely effective, and it's quite calming and soothing to the people you do choose to interact with. I wanted to make a joke earlier. I'll get to the poem in time here, but I live in an apartment in a small town, and so as society continues to change, and we're in one of those great states of flux right now, where it's like another industrial revolution, right? Where machines and computers are now really coming online, like they were envisioned to, kind of 70 or so years ago. We're getting to that point. So there's a lot of change and mobility, people losing jobs, and that productivity is catching up to us, which is ultimately maybe a wonderful thing, but it's a bit painful right now. For some, I heard on the radio tonight that right now the unemployment rate, at least for men, because that was under the scope of that toxic masculinity and what men do, Fight Club, to just kind of feel that pain and feel something again, feel alive, and I relate to. I haven't seen Fight Club, just clips of it, but I could understand. I understood, like, the men were craving. I was able to answer as I was listening to this as a man, with at least a physiology, and an athlete and a a man. I could predict what the broadcaster was going to say, like when the sociologist was analyzing Fight Club, because he did the interviews and stuff with these camps. I guess Fight Clubs are still going on, Silicon Valley and universities and stuff. It's taken off. It's a thing. And he said he was surprised. He says the men weren't doing it so that they could dominate and so that they could harm somebody else. I said no, they wanted to get hit. And I don't think there was a psychology, self-harm motive behind it. I was able to finish the broadcaster's sentence. It's like they wanted the pain. They wanted to get hit. Because that's what, and this is a little bit about what my poem and my song is describing from my response to Taylor's man song. That's what we're designed for. Okay? Men have been designed for basically 4 things. I'll try to remember them. We've been designed to lose our lives in wars or raids. We've been designed to lose our arms and limbs and digits at work. We've been... There was another one, and then the fourth one. The fourth one is if... Oh, the third one that I came up with was men have been designed to sit in a hovel and just write or research, right, and just obsess and focus on one thing and be really, really good at it and discover things. And the fourth one was when the women in the community select them. The women. Always the women. Do your research if you disagree with me, especially on First Nations groups. But it's the women that choose the leaders. They will bring you down if they don't like you. They have that intelligence, and they will prop you up and whisper to you and keep you going if they believe in you. So it's always the women. The women can get you through any kind of garbage that another man or group of men is putting you through. Make no mistake. Men that go to war, they write back to the women. And it's the women's letters that keep them going. They can keep fighting men forever as long as they're still getting those letters, as long as their girlfriend hasn't broken up with them, right? Very true story. So the last one is, if the women in the community choose that man to be the leader, those are the 4 jobs of a man that we're designed for physiologically. To die in a war, to lose our arms, digits, appendages at work, to, basically academia, right? To be a monk or to write, transcribe old texts, or to research and tinker with bacteria or yeasts or telescopes, right? That kind of quirky, again, very isolated thing. Or to be a figurehead, to protect the women as they... I'm going to be big and look tough, but you're actually going to be feeding me all the ideas because you're the smart ones, right? You have the knowledge. I just look big, right? And I'll grovel and I'll use my voice, but of course I can only do that because I know I have your support. Okay? So that was a thought I wanted to record from a different conversation with a really important person I had earlier today, so I wanted to include those. I think they tie together. But the joke was, so I live in an apartment, and if we were ever to transition, wondering like, would it be nice to maybe change my job, right? What's my physiology to design for one of those 4 things, right? But maybe comedy. If I need a new job, could I do comedy? I cautioned myself when I realized I'd have to study. I'm not so good at research and reading. I'd have to study what is comedy, what is crowd work, how does one be good at crowd work? But a little bit of a joke was, if you could have a bit, you try to have that rapport with your audience, because, so yeah, I live in an apartment. Yeah, that's a special experience. Any of you ever lived in an apartment before? Yeah, you got the creepy neighbors and it just feels kind of weird, right? You want to do your laundry, but, you need to do your laundry. You got that funk. You just need to do your laundry. But now you have to go into a common hallway. Anyone have that experience before? Yeah, some of you don't want to talk about it. Now, how many of you lived in an apartment in a small town? So I think there's a little bit of something there. Totally different level. Absolutely no privacy. So if you're that third type of man where you just need absolute privacy to just write, ponder, reflect, the philosopher, I guess we might call it, of something, philosopher of science, philosopher of philosophy, the philosopher, the soldier, the worker, the soldier, the farmer, the philosopher, and the figurehead. Living in an apartment in a small town is going to be a Tough haul. So where does that leave me? Be a soldier? I wish, but I got 2 kids. Be a worker, go lose an arm and leg, digits in a tough job. We can try. Maybe be a carpenter or something. Or lastly, keep reading, keep writing, keep reflecting. Don't focus on being charismatic. Don't focus on being attractive in any sense. Just focus on that stuff. And the women, the real women, not the girls that just want fun, but the real women in a community, that's what they're constantly looking for. Because I pick out the women in my community and I say, you should be mayor. And we talk and we strategize. And I encourage them and I remind them. It's like TikTok 2024 is coming up. And what they report back to me, they don't have the confidence. They say, you know what? Last Mountain Badger, you should do it. I go, I'm not good at the politics. I can strategize. I'm good in the shadows. And frankly, I think the tables have turned. The times for men being good at politics have come and gone. Women have always been heads and tails above men at conversation and politicking and just working the crowd, right? Have you ever seen a man try to work a crowd? Totally different if he has a woman that he trusts with him. There's a reason for that. She does all the work. Okay? But now I think with technology, social media, I think women feel strong enough, right? That all that power and influence in social media, that the power of that cell phone, it counterbalances this. And I think that gives a confidence to women. They say women don't join politics for a couple of reasons, and the biggest one is they're never asked. So I think that's the incumbent of men. It's like recognize your place, see where things are going, see where things are. Women are graduating, bachelors, masters, PhDs. No big deal. They have the more advanced brain. They have to, because their job has always been one thing and one thing only. The next generation. That is a highly functioning, multi-circuit, what goes beyond like a super dual core processor. Talk about multitasking, like 100 things at once. Yeah, they get a little paranoid and jumpy and emotional every once in a while. They have to be emotional. You want an emotional, compassionate person interacting with your offspring that will imbibe and transfer that important skill set of care and compassion to the next generation. Totally different brains, totally different physiology. Much better for politics, as long as they don't pick up any of the male's bad traits. Case in point, who thinks longer into the future? A man or a woman? Well, if it's a man or a woman, right, 70 years old, they're probably going to be able to see about as far. But who thinks further into the future, a 15-year-old boy or a 15-year-old girl? Right? That 15-year-old boy is thinking about 5 minutes into the future, 15 minutes if he's lucky. That 15-year-old girl is thinking 70 years into the future, because that's how long her baby's going to live. If she gets pregnant in the next 5, if she's lucky, 15 minutes. So it's ingrained in her physiology to think long term. It's ingrained in the male's physiology. Soldier, farmer. When I say farmer, I mean like sailors for fishermen. So, fighter, fooder, philosopher, figurehead for the 4 Fs. They're basically very single track, goal oriented, right? Go kill that guy. Go scout that. Go reconnaissance and report back one thing at a time, with a group of 20 other guys. but one thing at a time. Bring in the harvest, plant the seed, hunt down the caribou, the wildebeest, whatever, the mastodon, one thing at a time with a group of 30 other men. Research. You're allowed to be a bit of a loner, but then again, you get to kind of bitter and banter with other, traditionally in the Western experience, other males. Still, you're really only talking one thing at a time. And again, when you're going to all the social gatherings, you're going to have the help, usually, of a rather accomplished, intelligent, well-read woman. Maybe she didn't go to school, but she was very well-read. And that's why you were so successful. And then lastly, if you pass all the tests, basically if you can do all three of those really well, that's what the women in the group are looking for. It's like, is he a soldier? Can he fight? Or can he intimidate other men better than other men around us? Because that's important, right? We want a figurehead that makes the other soldiers on the other side of the fence tremble. Is he a good agriculturalist? Can he design an intelligent way of gathering food? Very important for the women folk, right? Does he understand philosophy? What's it all about? What is really important? Is he educated? Is he intelligent? Is he wise? Then maybe we're going to stand behind him and say, make no mistake who's actually in charge around here, but we're putting you in front. And women have always done this because they're very smart. A friend of mine told me, he said, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but whatever. It's like, you know who the real genius was, right? And I haven't heard anybody else talk about this except for one very well-read woman. It was his wife. No one's ever heard of her except for this very well-read woman that I know. It's like general relativity, all of that stuff, E equals MC squared. Now he was a figurehead. Look at how goofy that, right? Everyone knows that. The hair up here and the tongue down here, right? But who was the brains behind it? It wasn't him. It was Mrs. Einstein. But it was talk about symbiotic relationship. No one would pay attention to her. She's a woman at the time. She wouldn't get published, right? Lots of women in the age of literature, they publish and maybe still publish under male pseudonym pen names. So he was her figurehead. No one questioned Albert's ideas. But it was actually his wife that was the brains of the operation. And they usually are. And it's important. You want something in front of the brain. You want a skull, something thick and dense to go in front of the brain. That's the guy's job. Right? If we get taken out, no big deal, finding their figurehead, but the brain stays protected. So I'm sharing this with you with some context that there are some really advanced ways of thinking, I think, about the male-female relationship. You have to see female and women for what they really are. They are the brain. And we're just more traditionally an extension of that. To go further into the hills, to go further into the waters, to bring back usually fat, protein, resources, timber, knowledge, right? Do the dangerous jobs. And then the best of us are told. We're not really asked. It's kind of, and who would say no? If you had a posse, a group of women behind you that said, by the way, we're putting you in charge, you can't go wrong, right? It's like, I'm not debating anything, and that was my response. It's like, I know I've got some good ideas. I know I've got the philosopher mind. I know I've got that, those three minds. It's, I'm not good at the politics. I'm not good at the debating. I'm enough of that. I want to go walk around and just keep chewing on more ideas and just want to design stuff. Forget that. You women, I've got 2 daughters and an amazing wife. And I asked my 2 daughters not too long ago, so I'm learning about women, since I have 2 of them to study 2 case studies. And I get to look at, and I get to study the third one from afar. the mastermind of the operation. And I asked my two young daughters, they're 8 and 11 now. Almost 11. So we're on, what are we on? June 16th here, 2023. And I asked them, I'm able to just ask them questions. God, I don't know these things. I have, knowledge about outdoor survival and whatever, more physics based. But they're really intelligent for very high emotional intelligence, very high interpersonal. They've been in daycare since before they were 1. So I have 20 years of public school and interpersonal pressure cooker wisdom that lets me ask them questions. It's the 3 of them that usually live together. I'm more remote, kind of that philosopher, leave me alone and let me do my thinking, and ask me when you have a problem, if you need some help. It works quite well. I'm spending time with my daughters, giving mommy a break, and just reconnecting. He says, "Can I ask you something, ladies?" Just the 2 daughters. I go, "Yeah." I said, "Do you ladies enjoy fighting? Do you enjoy?" Are like, "Oh yeah." Now, I didn't know that. I certainly didn't know that 20 years ago when I met my wife. That would have changed everything. That if I'd known arguing and fighting is actually a sport, that's how she processes her day and her knowledge, that's her TV, that she needs a distraction, that's her alcohol or her heroin or her tobacco, is she needs to rewire her brain so that she can get away from compassion. She's like, "Let's fight. I'm tired of being compassionate, so let's fight." I didn't know that. Let's switch gears. I've been on this gear all day, so I'm fixing for a fight. I didn't know that. I took it very personal. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm more of an intellect. It's like, oh, everything you say must be, valid and accurate. If it's not, then I'm going to listen and I'm going to say, I understand your points here. I have similar memories, but this memory over here, I don't share that. Could you tell me? Not the proper response. I didn't know that, right? I've told my daughter so many times, so sincerely, told them to them both, together and separately, that I dearly wished I'd met them before I'd met their mom. Because it would have taught me how to be of assistance to my wife at a much earlier age. They've matured me so much. And my daughters don't faze me. I just see them as, I know what's going on, right? Their temper tantrums, and I just pick them up and hug them and say, "Yeah." Just throw them over my shoulder. It's like, "Yeah, you're doing great." And just that power, that chest to chest, and it's the reassurance, like, "Hey, you're not even on your own feet anymore. Everything's fine," right? And I have to be careful of this because you don't quite know what's going on. You're always doubting yourself as a parent, and sometimes my one daughter, she would do. I didn't get to spend as much time with her when she was younger, so she has a lot more temper tantrums, and she doesn't respond as much to verbal. Her mom's really verbal. I'm more touch. When they're in trouble, I'll hug them when they're having a difficult moment. And so sometimes I just hold my one daughter in my arms, and that's how I'd help her through her. Not tight, but I also wouldn't let her out of my arms. So giving her that reassurance, like, no, feel your dad's strength, feel how much. And I say this to her. I say, I do want to be in your life. I want you in my life, because it's tough. Because we separated. She was still breastfeeding. We separated. She was 18 months. It would have been about a week before she would have been 19 months old. So she didn't have that. So now I'm spending a lot more time. My first one, I had to sit beside her. you're on timeout. Okay, I'm going to sit beside you and just kind of model that behavior. A lot more work on my second child, because the longer you wait, the more you got to put into it. I want to share this poem. I do want to caution. I've shared it with two groups before, and of course a highly trusted, very well read advisor. The advisor gets it. Very well read. The words don't phase her. She gets it. Excellent listener. But the two other groups, the one didn't give me any feedback, and one a lot more PC, politically correct group, kind of more of an upper crust, more of a political organization, a lot more concerned about what do other people think. And I'd say maybe not as much on the critical thinking side, but more on not on the philosophical critical thinking, and more on the how do things look. So a lot more reactionary, I suppose, because there is some difficult language in here. And the first time I shared this with them, I didn't pause to caution them that, like, I want to be very clear. First of all, this is a response to Taylor Swift's song, because it had that visceral reaction. I was inspired and motivated to try to contribute back to the pool of knowledge of experiences, like she did for me with her song, the Man song. But also there was I don't watch a lot of Netflix or Disney Plus or any of the, but I did have a little bit of a channel for a while, or an account, and something bothered me. So scrolling through, and there was this really alarming title, right? Shock-getting, and it had just a couple words. Again, really alarming. I'll get to those in a moment. But the picture was just all men, like really tough, mean, like rough, thug, like instant, like these are some bad dudes. This was what they were trying to convey with the picture. And the name of the series was a documentary. I didn't watch it, but the name of the documentary, I believe, was Exterminate All the Brutes. And that had a visceral reaction to me, like, brutes? But only a man can be a brute? And what? We're this is on Netflix. This is a documentary, so supposedly more cerebral. And it's using this, like, cautionary, right? Exterminate. So when I saw that was when I committed these thoughts to paper. I was already chewing on my response to Taylor. But when I saw that, that's when I said, I got to do something about this. This bothered me as a gentleman, as a cerebral, philosophical, academic entity. I'm not angry, but I do have a response. I think that's wrong, and that needs to be commented on. And not wrong as maybe on a moral level, that this needs a comment. I need to call this out, and I need to try to process how this makes me feel, and I need to try to caution this. That's what I'm trying. What I mentioned it really early on in the song here, and I think I might mention it again later. That's what I'm trying to describe. I'm not advocating for this. I'm saying it with almost some sarcasm, like, this is what is out there, and I'm trying to mirror it back as hey folks, these aren't my ideas. This is what's already out there. But I'm a guy, and I saw that picture. How do you think that makes me feel? Does that make me feel? I'm a tough-looking guy. I keep my hair short just because I'm lazy, and I'm not so much lazy. I don't like to spend the money, and I don't want to interact with other people. More that third one, that philosopher style, but also it's one less interaction that might go sideways. Right? I miss my wife. I miss her scent. I miss her touch. So imagine getting my hair cut and shampooed by someone that smells not like her, but kind of, right? and they're touching, massaging your hair, and there's this feminine smell that I don't have around here for feels like centuries, right? And you go into that environment, it's overwhelming. I remember the first time I went to get my hair cut after the papers were served. I remember like I was moaning. Like I don't know, not very loud. I was like, I think this is kind of loud maybe. I don't know. I haven't done this before. I'm trying to do the self-care thing. Fortunately, I wasn't cautioned on anything, but I was able to perceive that, okay, maybe that's inappropriate. So the next time I go, it's like, okay, no, don't do that. Just, but it was that overwhelming for me that it's like, oh, and I don't know, that's in some of the media, right, where you see hot stone massages, someone's getting like, right? And in House, there's a scene where Cuddy's getting massaged and she lets out a little moan or something, and she's allowed to express herself. But I learned, School of Hard Knocks, well, School of Gentle Knocks that day, that I'm muted in that's not something that a man is allowed to do, where a woman would be. And so I don't usually see the gender differences. And it's like, oh, well, if a guy can do it, a woman can do it. Like, very logical. But I recognize and explore more, and so as I see more and more of these differences, and I'm questioning them, and it's a question I'm trying to put back. Like, is this where we want to be? It's not supposed to have an easy answer. It's supposed to be pondered. Do we want to be like Papua New Guinea, where the women are the warriors, the women are considered the tough ones? When a man, when a man and a woman, when the couple has a child, obviously it comes from the woman, but instantly they place the baby on the man, on her husband's belly, and culturally they say he's pregnant, it's his baby. Very rare, very rare society. But it was my wife that taught me that when she was in university. I was just fascinated by like what a fascinating spin on interpersonal relationships, right? So you'll hear that exterminate all the brutes, and that's the most jarring sentence, and so I just caution that I'm not actually advocating for it. I'm actually trying to call it out. I'm saying I heard these things, and it didn't just hurt me. It made me feel like a brute. It makes me go, am I a brute? Does society want to exterminate me if I look too tough, or if I'm just concentrating too hard? Do I suddenly, right? If I get the wrong light, fortunately I don't have any tattoos or piercings. Like how close am I to looking like a brute? If I'm hungry, if I'm tired, if I'm sad, can that be perceived as anger? I think it can. If I've got a forehead, I get you can see them. I don't usually get angry. I'm usually just contemplating. I'm just thinking, how can I see this differently? And these are the fruits of those efforts. If I can reference I originally wrote this a little more than 2 years ago, April 11th, 2021. It's 3 pages. I tried to make a legitimate song for this, and I will caution the second version of this, I was able to do a much better version of matching my word choice to hit that what do you call it, that iambic, that rhythmic to match Taylor's song and beat. This one, it's more of a really good poem. We'll see. I like rapping, but I'm not very good. But when I do get to a part, it feels more appropriate to me. So you can laugh at that. with me, and if you could think you do better, I hope you can. You know, try writing your own rap sometime. It's a profound medium because it allows you to just poeticize, but just a little bit faster. Like, I've got something to say. I'm really passionate about this. Here I go. No, I don't want to take a right. So I find it an appropriate medium. But here we go from April 11th, 2021. My response, my first attempt at responding to The Man by Taylor Swift, written and sung by Taylor Swift. Men are vermin, roaches to exterminate, tools to die, cast not a shadow as we lie. To our comrade, it's all good. Now please, you be her dad. Men are disposable. Exterminate all the brutes, Netflix announces. Look at that picture. Though horrid you can be, close your eyes. It's a man's face doubled that you see. Exterminate indeed, and why not? You've already taken my seed. I did my job. Now you're giddy. You're just one of the mob. What's it like to be so jealous? To burn with it so? You say, I have all the dough? Well, only for you can we work so hard, dying in fields, writing letters back to home. A girl we just met, yeah, well, keeping us alive in the mud. We buried another brother today. I hold your picture and hope for another as I write you another letter. Knowing you are safe back home, it somehow makes me feel better. I stopped at the shelter. Just one of the guys. I had a cane in my hand and I had a hat for privacy. A coat was too cold. A bag of clothes in my right. Another April blizzard a coming tonight. Fill out this card, sir. No thanks, I'm sure. Anonymous, you say? A card back? Huh. Okay. What? No option for clothes? Just food we give men. No one wants us. We beasts. Just food categories for donations given. No books for us. No blankets or bedtime stories. Women and children first. It needs to be. Women and children first. I agree. Were you a man, you would know. Men have it rough. Girl, we sleep in prairie snow. We are feared for living, and we're a burden for dying. Machines have replaced us. Our backs are not needed for a cyber attack. Excuse is not thus. Men are not needed. Except to be grease, another layer for progress, until war does cease. Men have hurt and caused so much harm. But should we all than be targets for your wit and your charm? Exterminate the brutes, pop culture cries. They're all just men. Each one of them lies. Light us up to burn on fire like Joan of Arc's fated pyre. No one would remember us. That's how we like it. Shadows and dust. We're supposed to be. For someone better, more able. Someone like thee. I really enjoy reading that poem. I've read it now 6, 8 times since I've written in 2 years, and each time it just kind of, it gives me a sense of empowerment that I'm able to go back to it. Hey, I wrote that, you know, good for you. It doesn't have to be great for anybody else, but yeah, man, like, you found a way to put your words down like that has a bit of a flow to it. There is some beauty there, and you're trying. You're trying, bro. For some reason, every time I read that poem, I'm compelled to open up my book. And I want to read more. I wrote this poem on June 24th, 2021. It was a Thursday. And this is when someone I didn't know much about, I knew this person existed. This is a celebrity, a popular person. But they were getting media attention, and enough media attention that it filtered down to my level, and it found my cave. And I already knew about this person. I had profound admiration for this person anyways. But hearing their story, it put a different light on that person and on their experience. And this is the poem that I wrote. It's a page and a half. Sing it if you know it. It's called Dear Old Brittany. Dear old Brittany, what's it like being you? The world your oyster, your home, your prison. Dear old Brittany, how is it you pull through? Kept secluded in cloister. Why wise? For what reason? Dear old Brittany, excuse my blessed naivety. I believed the hype, thought beauty was perfection. Dear old Brittany, what's it like being you? Your songs and dances were polished and catchy, your look honed and refined. But beauty is the struggle, not the glamour or crystal wine. So dear old Brittany, how do you do it? How do you carry on? From a world so grand to a box so small. Dear old Brittany, how many whimpers had and silent tear? So dear old Brittany, why are you still here? Maybe I'll keep it to 3. Here we go. This is July 10th, 2021. It was a Saturday. About 70 words. Called 2 minutes a day. 2 minutes a day. What do I do? What do I say when we only have 2 minutes a day? How do I tell you how much you're loved when we only have 2 minutes a day? How can I listen to you and grow together when we only have 2 minutes a day? So that was at a time there's some stress. It was during COVID, lots of stress. This is where the kids were, the home learning. And of course my wife was taking the brunt of that. The kids were at home with her. She's at work. So 3 girls, pressure cooker, all the hormones, and they're fighters. They're tough, these ladies. But the effect that had, because that stress of course filters out, that our phone calls were much shorter. Like mommy was just like, you can only do so much. And it's like, nope, say goodnight. Like she needed to carry on. She needed to get, bath and snacks, and we got to just do another day of this, high stress COVID nonsense. So that it did have that effect on our communications, and that was a way I chose to process it. And instead of being angry, try to just go more on that philosophical side, asking legitimate questions. That if you truly only have 2 minutes a day to talk to your kids, what is the best use of that? Don't not complain. I've listened to a lot of dads, and they get so bitter so quickly, and they're just haters, and it's sad. It's like little boys still whining that they're 40 years old or 50, still talking about the so-and-so that cleaned them out 30 years ago. Is that how you want to spend the next 30 years of your life, just being that jaded and bitter? And that was advice I was given many, many years ago on a completely different topic, because I met a colleague. His name was Barry, the company I worked with. And my job is to go around meeting the titans in each of the working groups, right? The managers were emailed in about 20 or so different working groups, and I was working in technology at the time. And my job was to be really clever. It was my supervisor's idea, but our job was to be really clever and have the solutions before we were asked for them, and to know everything about the business, but to be quiet about our suggestions. So it's he has a couple patents, and he's just a brilliant farmer, an incredible problem solver. And his solution was, you're the new guy, you just got this job, I know you, we worked well together, you got a mind, we need to get you schooled up really quick. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go do a survey. 20 managers. Each of them is going to give you their, 30 minutes, an hour with their best and brightest, but only 3 of them. Just their top 3. So we're not going to pester them too much. Just 3 hours. And now that's going to school you in, and you're going to ask them what software do they use. That's going to tell you everything about their business. Just what software do they use? What do you use that for? Oh, okay, cool. Next. Okay, what other software do you use? Oh, neat. Okay. So I really got rapid fire 60 titans in this engineering and technical group, very talented people. We're talking like 20, 30, 40 years experience, technical certifications and qualifications, professional designations, and we hoovered up that knowledge in 60 hours. And then I've given the presentation to the executive to say, here's your problems, this is what you need to do, here's your software. That was my job. But I came back one time. I don't know how I looked, what effect I was giving off. My manager, really experienced individual. He's like, how did it go? And I was like, I told him, yeah, I just interviewed Barry. He's like, He pulled me into his office, sat down, took my spot. He closed the door, and he sat at his desk. He told me the story. He said, years ago, Barry applied for a job, a promotion to be a supervisor, to one level up. As it happens, he didn't get the job. He said, Barry's been like that ever since. Still really intelligent. Like he made the cut. He was on the podium. He at least had bronze for this manager. He said, Barry's one of my top 3. But just not a jerk, but as my supervisor put it, bitter. Right? There's just like a kind of foul flavor to his interaction. Of like, dude, can I go out and can we start again? It was just that vibe. So I've had that with me for 15 or so years. Like, don't be bitter. Don't be bitter. And it was a really helpful mantra when you think about it, because it allowed me on that philosophy side to explore, okay, then what should I be? Right? Just whatever you do, don't be bitter. It's one of the worst things you can do when you experience hardship, is you start to become bitter. You putrefy, and who wants to taste you? Who wants to be your friend? Dude, you're just bitter. Right? You can be boring. I'll take boring over bitter. Right? I'll take bleak. At least you have that kind of deadpan British humor going for you. Bleak, I'll take bleak over bitter. And it's helped me a lot through, it's not a divorce, separation, it's just kind of I would call it more of a timeout between the two titans that are mommy and daddy. We are so equally matched. It's like my wife is just so intelligent and capable and very multi-talented, very time organized. She can do anything and she'll get it done in a day, and she'll do it again tomorrow. For me, I can do one thing and it's going to take 6 months, but it's going to be incredible. So you can see how that just how it could work very well, because she can give me any impossible task, guaranteed I'll have the solution, but 6 months. And so it could also be really frustrating, because she would be looking at me going like, bro, I'm doing all this work and what's going on, bro? You're I feel like I'm drowning here. She wasn't. I think what she was meaning, like on a task level, I was able to keep up with her. Not during the nighttime feedings. She got all the diapers. She did all the feedings in the middle of the night. So like, incredible, and grateful for it. I'd already burned out a few times doing different shift work over the years. So in a younger days, I would have been able to keep pace with her and step up, but you can only stretch that elastic as far as it can go so many times before it just kind of goes, we won't allow you to dishonor that habit. You will protect your sleep, because you've been down that road too many times, and we just won't let you ignore your sleep. So my wife did all that heavy lifting. But during the day, I was okay. Cooking, cleaning, washing, scrubbing, shoveling, laundry. I wouldn't fold the laundry. I'd bring it up and down the stairs, switching machines diligently, not that let it sit for 3 days, saying like, no, I was on it, right? Fabric softener, right? Trying to do it the way she would do it, get that bright smell, all that. And I realized, I used to put away the clothes, but I'm not going to anymore. First of all, girls' clothes are tricky. How do you fold this? And I'm used to neat and, boy stuff, simple stuff. So in my stress, that was one of the things I was able to vocalize. I'm not doing that anymore. Like, it's just too tricky. But also I explained, I said, during this time of stress, I think it's a good idea that we still share a process. Because if you're grumpy about, all the laundry you had to put, being dramatic, but like, if you're upset about all the laundry that you had to put away, will that call you back? Will that remind you of all the laundry that your husband carried down to the basement, washed, rotated, and carried back up? You probably still did a lot more work, especially with 2 babies and kids running around. But at least you're sharing that. You go, oh wait, I had to fold all this laundry because my husband kept on top of it. That he's trying to, or we're at least doing something together, trying to do that teamwork. So for those 2 reasons, the girl stuff just got too tricky. and I wanted us to still share a task, or something. So it's been a marvelous experience so far, for sure. Not easy, not pleasant. Maybe the term is wonder, full of wonder, full of reflection. I've grown a lot. I'm a lot wiser. I'm a lot slower. I can come up with solutions a lot quicker. The trouble is the people around me don't understand the solutions anymore. Because with all this time and with more people in my world, instead of just being selfish, thinking about myself, maybe my wife, but just thinking about myself, now I'm thinking of 4 people. 5 Boostmeister here, right? A lot more, and 2 households, and 2 vehicles, and longer time frames, and trying to understand, okay, yeah, but how does she see it? I don't understand it, but I'm trying. How is she seeing the world? And that is not an exercise that I was exposed to in, say, a high school physics class, right? That wasn't an assignment in the curriculum. Maybe it would have been if I'd taken psychology. But I was scared of the discipline. I thought it was creepy, right? Like, no, like, it's supposed to be private. We're supposed to be, like, each of us is supposed to learn our own minds and our own way. You're not just supposed to tell me, it's like the cheat code, right? You need to go and figure out yourself. That was in high school. I had that thought, and it's definitely been the as Robert Lee Frost, it's definitely been the road less traveled by. But I wanted to share these with you. 3 songs kind of buried in there, just to keep some privacy, and then just some reflections, my attempt at a joke, and just some reflections of almost an old man. It's talking, vocalizing has always been helpful for me, but I always had someone to talk to, right? I'd have a really accommodating or even encouraging girlfriend, or understanding, patient girlfriend and wife that would encourage it and tolerate it and just let me talk. And how frustrating would that be for her? It's like I'm saying these things, trying to understand my world at a very high systems level, right? Hearing stories that, the ancient Greeks, right? That they had their society collapsed because of erosion and the collapse of their agricultural output. And they even passed a law that says you should, on all of your plots of land, you should grow so many of these 3 types of trees. Olive was one of them, cypress maybe the third, the second, and a lime or whatever it was for the third one. And because they knew how roots worked, they knew how it all worked, they knew things were going down, they saw the output, production going down. But it wasn't up to the political. They passed the law, but then it was just a challenge to enforce it. So having that knowledge from like 3,000 years ago, and your poor girlfriend's like, and I'm driving around an arid climate, an agricultural arid climate, and you're just like, so like when our agricultural outputs collapse, like, so what are we doing different? How can we do it differently, right? Like think of like an inventor or an engineer that insisted on getting a very broad education, So they're not trying to design electrical circuits. They're trying to redesign cities and fields and transportation networks and agricultural systems. And it's no wonder when you ask her, so what movie you want to see? She's like, I don't know. She doesn't care. She just wants to hear something else for the next 2 hours. So there's something dangerous about wanting to be your spouse's best friend. I think it's maybe more just like want to be your spouse's spouse. Right? Want to be on their team, that if they need something, you're going to be able to help them find it. And it's to realize that, especially if you're really intelligent, it's probably not going to be you, because you're really intelligent. You're going to be able to come up with a solution that frees you up. It's like, here, talk to them. Here, have you tried this? Here. But the importance is to stay compassionate. It's like, I don't want to be your best friend. I want to be your spouse. I don't want to be your all and everything. I want to be your spouse. And that's a lot. That's work. I don't think people realize. I certainly didn't. I didn't even know what lust was until I met my wife. It's like, oh my God. Just the most, like, off the charts. Just, for our wedding, you can actually see her picture back there. I didn't realize that. It's blurry. But for our wedding, she actually chose, for her wedding dress, her inspiration was a Greek goddess. And it's like, yeah. You could see me very boring. I picked her colors, purple and orange. That was my contribution. And I showed up, and I insisted that we get married at 2 o'clock, not 2:30. Because I said, this was very low. I offered a very rational argument. It was ironclad. It was also very simple. I said, no, we're not getting married at 2:30. We're getting married at 2. And the women erupted, right? Like, future mother-in-law we've known for years. I don't think the sister interrupted, but everyone's there, and the girls have their, like, we're going to wake up at this time, they're going to do this. So 2:30. And we're at the in-laws' house, and we've been going there for years, so we kind of have a comfort with each other. And I said, no. The one time I really kind of commented on how is this going to go. And I was really calm, and I said, no. 2 o'clock. And I was like, first of all, it was kind of, I don't know, why is the man talking? What is it, and why are its lips moving? That was the sense. They didn't say that, of course. They're wonderful people. But it did put a wrinkle in the plan, and they could tell I was right, but they didn't know why. And they knew that usually if I'm speaking, they might not be able to understand me, but I'm probably right. Which is an extra challenge. It's like, okay, this guy's intelligent, but we're not going to be able to understand him. So is it, no, 2 o'clock. So you could kind of hear the collective eyes roll in the room. And I think it was a mother-in-law. Said, kind of challenging me, posturing, right? Why? It's like, because important things start at the top of the hour. And I think she started to kind of bristle, or just kind of, right? And it was my future father-in-law, her husband, just kind of pulled her aside or said something to her. And that was the end of it, 2 o'clock. And I really appreciated that. That maybe he knew, like, that the man's got a point. He's saying this is a very important day for him. You girls are just going to have to get up 30 minutes sooner to get your hair perfect. He's thinking about time. You're thinking about your hair. think I cared what she looked like? Nope. No, my friends. When you find her, you're just relieved she showed up. You know, it's like, oh, good. It's like you win the lottery. It's like I'm still trying to figure things out. Is there something quirky, psychologically with me? Is there something? Is it OCD where I can only focus on one thing at a time? Am I just a man? Am I normal? Is there some, the way I communicate with people, the way I super introspect? Is that autism? Is that a type of? Is that on the spectrum? There's also a family story from a couple generations back. One of my grandmothers. Apparently, the relatives were going to take her in to get a hearing aid because, like, no, she's not hearing us. So of course, they take her in to get a hearing aid. And I guess, they're like, come on, Granny, like, get up, we got an appointment, where are we going? And she's kind of like, what's going on, right? And the story is, she could hear perfectly. There was nothing wrong with her hearing. She just took that long to think of her answer. And I am like that. I take a tremendous amount of time to think about a topic. I like to do writing, but at the same time I'm sick of writing, so now I'm turning to this format, because it's like, that's another elastic band. You just put it on the shelf. Like, that's another elastic band. I used to draw pictures a lot. Stop doing that because it's like I'm sick of it. I can still do it a little bit. I still enjoy it, but it's like you just do the same thing as a coping mechanism, as a way to try to understand your environment for so long. It's like that chapter's kind of closed. Very rarely will I draw now. Color, I'll still a little bit. Writing on occasion, but now usually I have to be in public just to kind of help still pull me through, because I don't really want to do it anymore, but I know it's so important just to chronicle. It's like good day, bad day, document. It'll help another person eventually, maybe yourself or maybe somebody else, to just say, this is what I've been through, the good, the bad. Maybe there's a 3-line poem in there that's going to be useful for you, but read the whole thing. It's been my life. At least it'll distract you from your misery for a while, as I wallow in my own self-pity and my journey to pull myself out of self-pity. Written several thousand pages, not including several thousand pages, not including the emails or the texts or the paper journals or the notes I take into counseling sessions. Try to make sense of where did I go wrong, and I don't think I did. I married the best thing that ever came across my path, and so did she. She married the best thing that ever came across her path. The big challenge was we were just so young, 17 and 19, and it was just fun. For a long time, we didn't have responsibility. We tried to a little bit to try to say, okay, we need to try to grow up, right? Maybe let's take a class together, or maybe let's have a conversation. Let's try to set a budget. But neither of us knew how to reach that agreement. I didn't know how to say, no, this is what we're going to do for a month. Let's just try it, right? she didn't know how to agree without feeling controlled, right? It's like, you're not my dad. You're not, like, who do you think you are telling me how much I can and can't spend? It's like, no, sweetie. It's because I love you and I want this life with you. I want to sacrifice with you now. I want to withhold from you and me now. I want us to do this together so that we have more for ourselves and our family in the future. I want to invest with you. I want to grow our resources with you, but we can only do that if we have resources. If we're spending everything. But that was a really difficult concept just for us to kind of interface, because we come from different religions, different classes, different philosophies, a different education. So it's really a testament to both of us, and it's a beautiful love story that, like, we still talk to each other. We text, we're better in text. And the advantage of text, I've learned with such an intimate relationship, is it allows us to go back and reread it. I don't like it because it's so instant and it's kind of interrupting, and it takes some discipline to tell yourself that you don't have to write back right away. You can reflect, you can write back right away. You don't have to hit send right away, because the medium is the message. Sometimes I will write and then I'll just wait, because I want to share with her not just my words, but also my timing, that I have given this thought. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm not trying to fight you. You want to fight? That's what girls are for. Go fight with your other girlfriends, your daughters. Go fight. I'm not a fighter. Soldier, warrior, farmer, philosopher, figurehead. I understand those roles. A fighter is different. A fighter is just the scrappy person just fixing for a fight. I'm not fixing for a fight. I'm fixing for a solution. I'm fixing for better. I'm fixing for progress. I'm fixing for legacy. I'm fixing for family. So I'm not interested in the petty nonsense of who's right or who's jealous. It's like, in this capacity, I think I'm able to actually have a longer term mind than my wife. Because I think in those moments, those argument battles, she gets very passionate, and her thinking gets shorter and shorter in time span. And she says things, I don't know if she's trying to hurt me or if it's just a short circuit where it's like I'm just pulling concepts and throwing them, right? I'm just grabbing a plate verbally and throwing, I'm just grabbing something because I'm just trying to exercise my mind, because I'm tired of being compassionate for everybody else around me. And you're such a wonderful man that's always stood by me. Who could be safer than to fight than you? Because you're not going anywhere. Because I know who you are better than you do. So you're my safest sparring partner. And what I'm trying to find a way to tell her is, like, I'm not fighting you. This whole fight concept, do it with the girls. Fight your daughters, toughen them up. You guys, keep some morality to it. Don't be cruel to each other. And that's important to note, because even sometimes they're April Fool's jokes, like, these girls can get cruel to each other, and they're still preteens, but they have that mind. I'm not a cruel person. I'm not a fighter. Soldier, farmer, philosopher, figurehead. No. Finding a way to share that with them, that there's important things, that daddy's just setting the limit. And that's an important thing, and I need my wife to try to understand that it's not about control. I'm not trying to impose or harm her life. This is a genuine, healthy thing to do. You need your man to do this. It hasn't been done for you very much in your life. Your man is setting a boundary. Honor it. He has wisdom. He knows you better than you know yourself. Like you know him better than he knows himself. So if he's putting this much effort into something that's even smells intelligent, give it a pause. And maybe trust your man and go, oh, this is a tough pill for me to swallow, but it doesn't taste bitter. It's different. But if it's not bitter, do it. Well, I think I'll leave it at that. It still helps to just talk. One of the things about living alone is I don't have conversations nearly as much. I'll notice like I'll go weeks because I don't talk very much with my colleagues. They don't ask me to talk, and I don't want to impose on them. And the rules have changed. It's gotten so weird. The rules of interpersonal communication I had a really hard time with. But this one I tried to share it with my manager, but he brushed me off for the most part. I was like, I don't know what to do with that. I get you, but like, and it was I appreciated the knowledge. I really appreciated the knowledge. I hadn't thought of these words that way. I hadn't thought of those interactions. I don't have those experiences. I haven't been accused of these things. So it broadened my lens. Like if this is really happening, I do empathize with just the fear and the paranoia that I am female, whether I'm a smaller frame or not, whether I do jujitsu or not. If he wins, he might not, but if he wins this imagined physical confrontation, she's living with 70 years of consequence, and that's what's going on in her mind. And where I'm challenged is severity is different from probability, which is different from, say, truth or reality. That just because this possible low probability occurrence that this guy might be leering at you, he might be looking at you. I didn't know what the word leering was and how that can make women feel. I'd never been accused of it, didn't know about it, just doing my 4 things, trying to live my best life, thinking about my family, right? I went, wow, could you imagine being a woman, right? You want to feel safe, you're doing your thing, going to the gym, or in this case, going into a work or an office, and you feel these brutes, right? These big, tough guys that make you feel really uncomfortable. That you feel really uncomfortable. Maybe they don't shower as much, maybe they don't shave as much, maybe their clothes aren't as pretty, or maybe they're not ironed, these little things, right? Maybe their glasses are broken, right? Little things like that. Maybe their hair isn't trimmed, maybe they got blemishes on their skin, maybe a few piercings or a few, a roughed up ears. They look tough and ornery, but you don't know why they're trying. You don't know who they were defending when they got all these battle marks. You don't know what kind of chemicals they were working with to pay for their family. So you're making a lot of assumptions out of this person's exterior. You don't know what just happened to one of their brothers or kids, or what they're going through. But based on appearances, yes, it can be quite overwhelming and intimidating for especially petite women. You just pick them up, it's a bag of flour, right? So petite, martial art trained or not, it's like, I just picked you up, what are you going to do? And I think they have that in their in their minds. And now this person keeps looking at them, this troll. And that was this kind of, whatever they called it, not sensitivity training, but it was good cultural awareness or workplace culture awareness. I didn't know this stuff existed. I didn't know women felt like them, so I'm grateful for the training. As a man, kind of coming full circle back to Taylor Swift and how we started this, that toxic masculinity in Fight Club is, as a man, I didn't know that was even a possibility. And I'm a thinker. I will look angry, right? I am not angry. I'm concentrating. Big difference. I'm not thinking about you. I'm staring right through you. It's sorry. It's nothing to do with you. Talking to a very well-read confidant today, I did come up with one defense for leering. Maybe it's not appropriate, but I'll share it. It's like, I work in a really ugly office space. And again, I'm an artist. Which is not to say I'm good at anything. It just means I honor beauty. I'm trying to give beauty back. Beauty has helped me so much in my life. I want that process. I don't think I'll be successful. The odds are very much against me, but they're completely against me if I don't try. Chipping away at that song and so forth. Trying to contribute, going through that process. So as an artist, and I think this is universal for people, that don't we just like art? Don't we take some comfort and some solace in being around just beautiful, I don't want to say beautiful things, but just beauty, right? It's distracting, but it's comforting. People go to these cathedrals and these statues for a reason, right? It's irreverent. There's a comfort there. So I want to offer that, at least as not saying it's right. I don't quite fully understand this idea. This is a junior idea, but I'll put it out there that, and more as a question, is that an acceptable reason, especially if it's more unknowing, just that, oh, I didn't realize I was doing it, you're just really pretty, sorry, like I didn't have any ill intent, but it's just really hard not to look at you because of your geometry, right? You're statuesque, you have skin, you have the geometry, and frankly, as a man, my brain is hardwired to recognize not the female form, animal shapes, to recognize the healthy horse, to recognize the healthy animal geometry and the ligatures of those animals. I'm either going to admire them because I want them to be part of my group, or I'm going to avoid them because that's going to be not a challenge, or it's going to be too challenging and too risky for my 40 compadres on the protein pursuit. So I offer that. And is that in a different age, not in the current age? I don't think we've invested enough cerebral might and time to considering, like, is that a gift? Did other cultures do that? That it's just nice. Have you been around people that will just give other people hugs, or they'll offer free hugs, right? Or they'll just hand out, let's go buy a dozen bagels and just hand them out. I did that once at a football game years ago. It wasn't bagels, it was crackers, and we had Cheese Whiz and jam and just the goofy things we do in our youth, and we have two good buddies with us. You're going 20 seats up on the stand. You want Cheese Whiz on it? Just crackers. But it was the fly flakes in the metal tin, so there's something for fly flakes. It was a beautiful memory. But do you have that memory, that story, where you want to share something with other people and it contributes? Is beauty more than beauty? Would be maybe part of my question. Is it an essential nutrient? Do we need to be around beauty? And Jordan Peterson, that's one of his advices, and it's either chaos or order. his his 12 rules of chaos or 12 rules of order. Uh, but that's one of his prescriptions of the 12 is pick any room in your house and try to make it as beautiful as possible. There's merit to that. It's encouraging. It's motivating. It reminds you of the possible. Well, what about beautiful people? Not as objects, but as motivation. Have we known people in school or at work that when you see that person, no matter how they look physically, it's how you make you feel like, oh, right? Amy, years ago, worked with a colleague named Amy. It's like, dude, it's going to be a good shift because Amy's here. You feel great. Or Chad, it's like, Chad's here. It's just, Cliff, yeah, he just wasn't quite as, older, but like, Chad's here. Like, hey. Yeah, he felt like my brother. It's just so cool. And he was also beautiful. He had a nice frame. He was also geometrically, but it was more so how these people made me feel. Do we feel better when we're around beauty? If we're around beauty, are we allowed to look at it? These are just genuine questions. I don't know if they're supposed to have answers. Here's another one. It's just a question. Is beauty a common good? We all own the waterfall. Did society contribute to Arnold Schwarzenegger? Beautiful physique, especially when he was younger. Or what was his name? David Atlas, a little more trim. Or who's the hunk Canadian? I can't remember his name. Blade, right? What's his? Not Ryan Gosling, but the other guy. That's the sassy. What's his name, Booth? Not Daredevil. This guy. These are good-looking people. I'm focusing on men to make more of a point that it's just nice having those people around us, but also they didn't do it by themselves, right? There was knowledge and society, a wealth of nutrition and science and engineering and reading. These guys read. You get a body like that. That's one of the things that I look for, that I admire about other men, is depending on their physique. Now, as an older man, I didn't do this as much 25 years ago, high school. I was just like, wow, like Scotty, I can't say his last name, but it was a 25 years ago Scotty, not a contemporary Scotty that I know. It's like he just had these amazing calves. They were just like, dude, like those are astonishing. I never told him, of course. But from the physiology, the geometry, it's like I didn't know something could just look like that. It was just so balanced. And he had these striations. Like, that is so cool. Right? And remember, I don't read a lot of books. I try to. These are to get me to read them. The way I experience my world is visual, but it's mostly through, listening and visual, and then just contemplation. So again, if I'm looking at Scotty's leg, it's not because I'm perving on him. This is like, oh, I'm remembering the muscle chart that I saw. And it's like, bro, I've seen exactly, like, you look just like the muscle chart with the proportions. But now you have like the striations. Like, that is so cool. I didn't know the calf had like those two sides of the calf. And so that's maybe an example of just like this more philosophical, introvert that just try to study his world and understand it. Yeah, I did that. Didn't ever had any issues. We'd always be in the gym, and it was just such a silly story to share with you. But heaven forbid that happens to a woman. You don't know what we're thinking. And I tell you, most of the time we're not thinking about your worst nightmare, or we're not even thinking about a fantasy. If we see someone, especially a woman, if a man sees a woman, it's just a thank you. It's like, it's like a rainbow. I'm not trying to objectify. I'm just trying to say, remember, like even Jordan Peterson's advice, beauty in your life is better. Should you not be grateful and appreciative when you see something, when you see beauty? It's a different perspective, I think, just to share that, or at least to challenge that don't believe, the media don't believe the hype. We're not all, I don't even watch these type of movies, but we're not all dangerous. Most of us couldn't possibly be dangerous, or we wouldn't have gotten this far socially, right? How many of you, I've learned from some women that I've known over the years, a lot of y'all like to watch horror movies. Slash them up, cut them up, just horrible, really creative, twisted. The more twisted, the better. I've learned from the female psyche. I think it distracts you from just the other horrors in your life, and being so compassionate for everyone in your troop and group for so long. It just get that gear shift so you can just relax, let the blood go somewhere else in your brain for a while instead of being on compassionate mode. But I think that would be a greater question, and a greater reason for reflection, is compare your real world experiences, which in some cases have been quite horrific, but compare those also to your imagined, or the kind of media you consume. Do you watch horror movies and you think men are monsters? Is there a correlation? Is there a relationship? Of course, same goes for men. Do you watch, do you pay more attention to the cheerleaders than the sports team? Does that have an effect on your terrible experience with women? So it's things to ponder, and just to be more careful with the ideas that you choose to allow into your brain. That was a concept that came to me only recently. I was talking with my exceptionally well-read advisor, and I was describing to her this book, right, where is it? This one here, Dostoevsky. I liked the author's story. I heard it on CBC, heard it on the radio, and I was like, wow. So when this book became available, I grabbed it, because he was a Russian author in poverty. But it's just fascinating to me that, like, bro, you're so broke, drunk and cigarettes and just destitute. I'm ignorant of these things. How do you get something published 150 years ago? You're so broke, but then how are you able to? I don't understand it. So I was intrigued by his personal story. But that actual novel, it's I think it's a work of fiction. But it's a book I've realized I don't want to read that book. It's Crime and Punishment's the name of it. Really dark. It's just no. That is not. It gets it's considered one of the the top 100 books of the whatever it was, 20th century, 19th century, and certainly from coming out of Russia, a unique insight into the Slavic and the Russian culture, which I get very, very little of. I have very little exposure to that. But I don't want to read about those possibilities. Like, that's a no. There's there's a moral. I don't want. It's not that I want to prevent other people from doing it. Have the book, borrow it. Maybe it will help you on your journey. Right? If you've been through a lot of trauma, it might really help you to read some of these horrific books to give you some context to compare and say, oh, well, at least I don't have it as bad as her. I don't have that interest. So that I'd share that with you. I'm not sure. I'm contemplating sharing with you my there's just some beautiful poems in here. It's a sense of pride. It's almost a complete book. This was the first book that I sat down. It started with Taylor Swift's piece, and my first entry was that dedication to Britney Spears, where I'm asking, I think, important questions, because I'm genuinely interested in this person. Like, there is a tremendous amount of just fortitude and talent and just inner strength, right? To be that on point, that practice. Like, I'm not a dancer. I could dance one type of dance in high school. It was a jive. I had an amazing dance partner. But it's just like, these are abilities that I just marvel at. Like, wow. Like, you're so fluid and on point. It is just genuinely masterful. And you're so practiced. If it was a man, you're allowed to call them a machine, because they're just so engineered, so purposeful while looking effortless. I don't think it's appropriate, at least in my culture, to say a woman is like a machine. It just doesn't transfer the same way. For reasons I don't understand, a man, he can work like a machine, he can just work forever, but it's not appropriate to assign that parallel to a woman. It's just like watching a piece of water, or a piece of the wind. And it was multi-sensory, because at the same time you have a beautiful voice as well. I don't care if she's lip syncing. It looked cool. She passed the believability test. She was able to do it good enough that it tricked my brain. It was like, it just phenomenal, right? And it was completely astounding to me to consider that people, like, I can't move around like that at all. But then to have the breath control, to actually sing, and like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, like, they can do it too. It's incredible what some of these talents can do. But that was the context for Britney Spears. These are sincere questions. Justin Timberlake, I can't ask these questions to him because I don't know as much about his life. And it seems to have been, maybe he's just more discreet, maybe people have left him alone. Maybe he just hasn't had some of those awkward moments like Britney Spears has. But like, these are genuine philosophical questions. Like, I admire you as from one brain to another, that you have so much strength and resilience. It's a genuine question. Like, what are your prayers? What have you read? How did you get so mentally tough? It's like when you go to the gym, right? You're able to ask advice. Like, hey, like, I see what you're doing is working. Can you give me some tips? I can see it through that medium that you have an incredible mind. So these are genuine questions, like, how do you do it? What has been your secret? I'm not talking about your dance routine or how you care for your voice. I'm talking about that's an incredible machine you got up there. And pop the hood. Like, tell me about it. What what did you do to dial it in so much? Because it's astounding. That is a machine you got up there. It's a sincere set of questions I ask her. Because I did try to read. I admire somebody else, but not as much after reading their biography. I haven't pursued or read Britney Spears' biography. I don't think that. I'm guessing they wouldn't be able to do her justice yet to write a proper biography. I'm sure they've tried, but I don't think that best version of her story has come out yet. It just wouldn't be authentic enough. Then it was another thing, a beautiful voice, just so compelling that, and you know, incredible lyricists behind her and compelling voice. And so like I actually I went to the library. It's like, please, I would like. I looked it up. It's like, does Pink have a biography? I'd like to know more about her brain and just what connects that voice and the sounds to that computing mechanism up there. And yeah, it's called Pink with an exclamation mark or the inverted exclamation mark, whatever it is. Place it on call, get it a couple days later, pick it up, read it. I was thoroughly disappointed because it's not a biography. It's like a 200-page resume. And then I did this song, and then I got this award, and then I got this, which told me a lot about the industry. It did tell me a lot, but very discreetly. It told me that someone probably pressured her. It's like, this, for your career, like her agent or her publicist. It's like, bro, like this is what everyone's doing. Like, Avril Lavigne's doing it, and like Mariah Carey's doing it. Like, you need to compete. You'll sell another million records. You'll instantly go platinum. And if you just write a book. She didn't want to write a book. It's very obvious because there's nothing helpful for of academic study that's like, how do you cope? How do you grow? What's been your journey? It's just resume. This accomplishment and this song and then this award and then this, which tell me she's a very private person. Tell me that she has experienced something. She does have knowledge and a story to share. She's not interested in sharing it. Her medium of the books are very intimate for her. I'm guessing she reads a lot, and it would be too intimate for her to put a proper biography, like an actual biography, not a resume, into a book. She was obviously pressured into it. It wasn't her idea. She wasn't ready. And clearly music is a genre that she's more comfortable with. Or arguably maybe there's more distance, right? You can trick your listener and layer it with, chords, Taylor Swift, with different chord progressions and drum beat progressions, and it can take an awful long time, especially for someone like me, where you're listening to all the different components at the same time. I don't necessarily hear the words. It takes me a very long time to hear the words to a song, but I'll know what it's about. So Pink, very private person, I'm guessing, can kind of hide behind the performance, and that's an example of me. Maybe it's like there's something I wanted to learn about, researched it actually, instead of thinking about it. It's like, I think you can help me. I think you have knowledge. I think you have an experience. Please, can you tell me your story? I see that you have a story. I'm so excited. I'm going to read about you, because you're here as an accomplished mind. Tell me some of your history. Which actually is a Greek word meaning rational inquiry. So tell me your thoughts. Tell me your self-reflection. Give me knowledge. I know you have talent. I know you have ability. You are an accomplished person. You are clearly a wise person. Teach me. She was pressured. Very clear from that book. And I don't think many other people have come to that conclusion. I certainly haven't heard that conclusion. So that's an example of what it feels like to be not the soldier, not the farmer, but the philosopher. That you see things and you understand things that other people don't get, and who are you going to share these things with? And you're sick of writing them down. You're not going to write a story about it, or a picture. Can't figure out how you would paint it. You just forget that noise. So you're just going to ramble into the digital eye here. You don't have anybody else to talk to, but you want to relax your mind. You want to practice some of those the tricks from the feminine knowledge. To just sometimes you just need to talk, but you don't have anyone to necessarily talk to. So I recorded this with intent. I wanted to make a long video, share some different ideas, useful reflections, and give permission to other people. I've heard people say that, that about themselves, like, oh, I'm so scatterbrained. People will say about themselves, or, oh, I just lost my train of thought. That's okay. That's a good thing. It takes practice to link it a little bit, to learn to be not a good storyteller, a decent, where you at least care about what you're saying, and you at least can validate yourself and say, the next person might not get me, but I'm trying to improve. I think it's worthwhile to put my thoughts outside of my head so I can hear them. And I think it's worthwhile that I share these thoughts with other people, and it's a part of personal growth to not be so scared about who I might offend. All my YouTube videos, I insist on making them, I always say they're intended for children. Of course they are. They're intended for my daughters whenever they find them. There's nothing in my poem that was inappropriate. The most horrific thing I do on my channel is reading 2 books. This is one of them. The Chronicles of Joan of Arc as interpreted, the personal recollections, of Joan of Arc. It's the only book that I know of. It's the only biography they say. This is one of why this book is so neat, not because you know how it's going to end and it's just gut-wrenching, but this is the only biography that's of record that's known. They say it in the preliminary stuff, prologue and so forth. This is the only known biography that comes from testament that has been given completely under oath. So truly remarkable way of studying someone's life. That this is understatement sworn to God, or whoever your higher power is. That this is very weighty stuff, and I've been struggling with it. The details are fascinating. My advisor, well-read advisor, leaves me little breadcrumbs and cautions me and tells me how it's going to end. Yeah, she was actually tricked into wearing men's clothing. That was what she was convicted on. She wasn't convicted as a witch. She was convicted as a cross-dresser. The more you know. Because they took away her clothes. Because they couldn't get her. Hours and hours, days and days. It's a panel of men. There you go, Taylor Swift. Panel of men beating up on one tiny woman. Not educated. Illiterate. And they're asking her these really tricky, like, philosophical and rhetorical and advanced questions, about theology and how does she know that the voices are God as opposed to the devil, and masterful responses, and she's holding her ground. And it's like it's a hung jury. They can't pin it on her. And it's like these 10, 12, 8, whatever the number was, this council of mastermind geniuses for like lawyers, rhetoric, judges, brilliant minds, and they can't catch her. They need to burn her. but they have to do it properly. They have to follow a process. They need to catch her on some crime. Because they can't just let this, like, she just kicked our butt in the wars here, right? Like, we can't let her get away with it. She just liberated France. Oof. Britain can't let that one go. But they didn't actually convict her on a witch. She successfully defended herself a witch. Joan of Arc was not a witch, even according to her critics. But what they did, when this goes on for days and days and days, she's locked away, hauled down, trial, 10-hour trial, however long it was. This was a marathon, followed by many more marathons of just mind gymnastics. And she defended, wave after wave of assault, of mental gymnastics. And finally, one of the guys had an idea, like, wait a minute. I don't know how her clothes came off. That I don't understand. Maybe it's a sleeping gown she still had, but they stole her day clothes. We'll pretend until I get to the part in the book. But they stole her clothes. This is a different time. This was the 1450s, 1200s. If I can find that for you quickly here. 1492 is how it begins. And he's reflecting, this is her friend, who was her page, and he's reflecting backwards when he was 82. So this took place kind of the early 1400s, because they knew each other since they were kids. And Joan died when she was 16, 17. So she died, like, call it 1430 or so. Different time, different set of values. So they took away her day clothes at the very least. And she wasn't molested in that sense. That's not what I'm trying to get to. They tricked her, right? Like, while she's sleeping, she's in her nightgown. Next day, bro, where are my clothes? Because clothes were still there. What they actually did is they took her clothes and replaced them with a set of men's clothes. And they had her. Because no matter what she did, she only had two options. Well, technically three. She only had two options. The one would be to go nude and at least to change out of her nightgown. That would be considered immodest, not modest, and it's a crime. She's trying to seduce, right, other people with her witchly ways. She would be convicted of witchcraft. She could go in her nightgown, again, same thing, seduction, she's a witch. Or she could wear men's clothing, which was considered a crime. But it was not witchcraft. It's just a crime. So she weighed her options. And yeah, Joan of Arc, she changed into men's clothing. And then that's what they had her on, and that's why they burned her at the stake. Alive. Feet first. I haven't got to that part yet. I'm reading this book slowly. I think I'm having a harder time of it than my daughters. I think they just gobble it up and be like, this is cool. Right? And it wouldn't bother them. It bothers me. Because this is horrific. And I'm learning, I think horrific things happen to women a lot more than it happens to men. I think women are maybe better wired to handle horrors than men. But I've intentionally put this book on my channel. It happens to us, 16, 15, 17-year-old Joan of Arc. And they say children. They don't define children. I do think it's appropriate. Because any clever, 10, 11, whatever year old that can find this book, that can understand it, they're mature enough. It's such a gentle, slow story that the book will so compassionately mature that child that when some of the grumpier stuff does happen, it's not even a concern. It's done it in a really intelligent, gentle way that helps the child grow and mature with wisdom, without any marks on their gentle minds. so softly transitions them to just a slightly higher awareness of what sometimes happens in the world. So I think that's a very important book for young people, especially girls. You know, it's like, you can do anything, and I can prove it. You can take on the world, and I can prove it. Here's the book. All you need is yourself. Just pray. You can literally do anything, because she did it. Now, unfortunately, there might be a grumpy ending, but it's going to be worth it. So do it. And here's a bit of a map that if you need to change anything in your life, this is how you do it. So it's a very important book to share with young women. If I would allow myself latitude, which I won't, but if I was to, I would consider this the young girl's Bible. Like, this is an important story. They sanctified her, they canonized her, so she is a saint. That took a while, and she's remembered as, still to this day, that the I've read it a few times. Is it the liberator or the savior of France? It's a beautiful story that describes some really grumpy times. But I think it's important because it offers a map of how to come out of it. And what could be more relevant than today. Definitely fitting for Ukraine, for Sudan, and for Rohingyas, for Burma, for all the other countries and war zones and civil war zones that just aren't making it into our consciousness right now. I think the cartels there's lots going on in Central America right now. Ebbs and flows of tyranny. But here's a map to get yourself out of it. And for any Americans out there, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, yeah, Tom Sawyer, same author. Prince and the Pauper, same author. Mark Twain, or Samuel Clemens if you're educated. He wrote this book. They asked him to. He was invited. The French asked the American to come over and do justice to their savior, their saint. So that's a beautiful story. The other one that I'm slowly, still, it's like a multi-year project. Part of the reason is it's really hard on my throat to do the voices that I've elected for, like Agamemnon, and it's just pooches my voice. But that's the see, it's not Alzheimer's, it's just an unpracticed memory when you live in isolation for the Iliad, pardon me. And again, that's a good book. And it's one of my daughters holds a really special place. She has a real special connection to horses, and it's remarkable because when you read the Iliad, and I haven't finished it, I've just started, 7 or 8 chapters into it, whatever it is. But these are old documents. Read the preface, read the translation, read each piece. Don't just skip to chapter 1. There's actually really helpful nuggets of knowledge in there. I didn't used to do that. That's something that's come to me as I've matured. Didn't do that in high school. I just skip to chapter 1 and start reading. Now it's like, these are some nuggets, translator's notes, and this is the second edition. What did they change from the first edition? A little bit nerdy, but there's wisdom and there's value to it. In these preliminary pages, they tell you the plot. Basically, they say, like, the horse is going to die, and we can tell you everything about the plot, and you're still going to love it. Because I guess that was something that the Greeks would do. They'd tell you at the beginning, like, this is what's going to happen. You know, a little prologue, talking guy, giving the summary. Maybe, you know, because they have the masks, and just maybe people wouldn't otherwise understand, or just their style. They said, this is what's going to happen. The original trailers, this is what's going to happen. But people loved it anyways, because they know what's going to happen, but it's still done with such mastery that it didn't ruin the story at all. Because your concept or your guess of how that plot would go doesn't compare to what the twists and turns and surprises and artistry. So it's like, sure, I'll tell you exactly how it goes. It's still going to blow your mind. Because my craft exceeds your imagination. And that's what they kind of did with the Greeks. And I thought that was a really neat technique. And it's like when you get to the part, you're going to cry when you read that part that describes that horse dying. It was so-and-so's war horse or something. I was like, wow. Again, that's not helping dear old dad get through the book. They're sharing these just heart-wrenching stories. The old softy, you know, tough old fighter girls are like, that's nothing, give me another one. And then this marshmallow softy dad is just struggling to share that. But I think that's important to share with kids, to select books to read to children. It's one of the most important things you can do, is to read to children. It's an interesting tidbit. This astounded me, and it's neat to see what people do with their success, and it reveals some of their story without reading their biography. Everyone knows who's the number one book distributor in the world. Jeff Bezos, right? It's Amazon. Does anyone know the number two? And it's not whatever his name is, Giselbrecht. It's not Dr. Seuss. Okay? This is a philanthropist. Everyone knows it's a woman. Everyone knows her name. But she's a big advocate of reading to children. And she's just a genius, a person with a heart. Like a truly compassionate person when you see where they put their energies, what charities, where do you volunteer, right? It's Dolly Parton, because she started a charity, and it's distributed so many books that she's number two in the world. So I think of that, and I'm encouraged by that. When I've chosen these books with great care. I know they're advanced books, but these are books of wisdom. And wisdom is a seed that needs to be offered to children at a very young age. I've often said to my girls, as are reflected, as I think kids are born with wisdom, and it's usually beaten out of them, and then they spend the rest of their lives trying to reclaim it. That's one of my personal beliefs. So it's more so trying to culture that wisdom that's already there. They already know how to think. They might not have the words, but kids naturally know. There's studies on this, and BBC has documentaries about babies and all their amazing natural abilities, that babies naturally know right from wrong. They will avoid the jerks. If one puppet is beating up on another puppet and then you offer those puppets to the kid, they'll never go with the violent puppet. And just those kind of, even though the kid can't even speak, it can, barely even sit up, kind of, 4 months old type thing. But they naturally know, and the good, they naturally favor it, insist upon it, are drawn to it, and they shun the bad. But they know what bad is. Violence is bad. Find another way. Be smarter than that. Be more cunning. Right? Find a way to capture your opponents instead of blowing them up. Find a way to compel your opponent to surrender because it's just a bunch of men usually, and you just have to convince them like, bro, we got you beat. And they go, oh yeah. Right? That's where the minds need to be, not blowing each other up. These are fathers and sons and uncles, and these are real people that have often been pressed through economics or through trickery or through coercion or politics into doing some very dastardly deeds. Greece, as I mentioned in my poem, Greece for progress. Another layer of progress. And that's something that maybe it also misses the discussion, Taylor Swift, is like, women are treated horribly. No debate. No debate. Who's talking about men? And I want to talk about men in an academic historical context. A more holistic context, because it's quite, you can quickly understand the experience of women because it hasn't changed too much throughout the ages. It's been pretty rough for a very long time. Say likewise for men, but it's like no one. How do I do the fingers, right? Like no one's talking about it because we're disposable, and we need to be. Someone's got to do it. Someone needs to cut down the trees. Someone needs to bring in the protein, right? And it's just things that need to be considered. And I say now, to return to the toxic masculinity, they're talking about contemporary stuff and like, why are we like this? Like, and my assertion to respond to the CBC's question is, we haven't had so many. I'll try to find my words here. And all the different terms, alphas and betas and sigmas, I don't know what that means and I don't care. It's irrelevant. But the most brilliant of men have always survived, with the exception of tragedy. Think of like Richie Valens and the Bopper and in the 50s or 60s there, right? Like every once in a while tragic things happen to incredible men. But at the lower tier, whatever you call it, the peasants or the just not as well off, the not as fortunate, the not as lucky, they've been grease. They've been the machines. And what's changed through these decades, the 20th century post 1945 till present, so what's the math on that? That nearly 80 years, 4 generations. How many generations is that, right? In some cases, it might even be like 6 or 7 generations. If it's every 17 years, that's a lot of people. Generation after generation, just compounding and growing and morphing culture and expectation, because there's peace, and you have all these men that historically just wouldn't have lived as long. Like they this is where most of the men were at. You were a soldier or you were a protein gatherer, and those are very dangerous jobs, really important to the long-term success of the society, but not a very lengthy lookout for your life. But now all those men, it's almost like a reverse abortion. Not to trigger anybody, sorry if I didn't caution you on that, but like if you read Freakonomics book, came out over 15 or so years ago, they have some neat research into crime rates, relationship, maybe not a causality, tough to prove causality, but relationship, falling crime rates to higher either contraceptives or abortions. I don't want to get into abortion, but it's at least academically interesting, whether you agree with some of the conclusions, and kind of public policy concepts could go completely irrelevant. At least it's food for thought. It's like it's reversed from that, because now you have battalions of men, generation after generation. So, like, low quality men that would have normally been, right? They made families, right? And starting in, like, whatever, the 50s or the 60s, they would have normally been applied to other social pursuits in a war, or less mechanized, more dangerous protein harvest. But they lived, and they, maybe not very strong leadership abilities, maybe not very strong introspective, obviously greater proclivity to violence, and maybe crime. So very impulsive. Those are the soldiers you want. They're very impulsive. They'll go over the top and they'll get it done, but they're probably not coming back. All those impulsive men, millions of them, that throughout the ages they just would have, right? They wouldn't have made families. Those really impulsive men made families. The 50s and 60s. And then those impulsive men became grandparents. So you have a second generation of maybe shitty fathers, coming into shitty grandfathers. And then it happens again, and probably on the third or the fourth, or maybe the cusp of the fifth time, that you're getting into some really degenerate, intergenerational trauma. That would be the grumpy side. At the same time, some of these men are really tough and brilliant. Some of them are lucky. And you get the innovation. Because they're fighters. They're, right, they do grind through it. They fight themselves. They find a way to pull through whatever circumstance you throw at them. They're just that tough. And they adapt, because some of them would have adapted if you put them in the trenches. They come through. So those are some of my reflections when people are talking about the state of society right now. I find it just, I don't think there's a problem to be solved, but it's just things that make you go hum. And maybe another piece of the puzzle is that, like, society hasn't had this volume of this type of males before. And it's like, what do you do? You've heard of, there's the incel movement or concept. I think that's relevant, because all of those incels that, like, women wouldn't have desired, they probably naturally would have been more likely to have been scooped up for a war or 5. So it's like, I'm fascinated by unintended consequences. It's just, it's neat. What do you do with them? What do you, you still have to act morally. You need to proceed with this, very carefully. But I think it's going to be okay. I think there's some neat things that are going to happen. I don't think leisure is necessarily the solution. I think we need to find a way for these men to adapt into still meaningful work, where they can still contribute in some way. Probably something physical, dance, for instance, is a really good substitute for combat, right? So I'm fascinated by these things, and I've been told by many people over the years that, told by one man many years older than me, we were in the same club together, and I gave a speech, and it was actually just, I read the prologue to the Last Spike by the late great Pierre Burton, Canada's historian. And it was something I cared about I just kind of pace the room with these